Hey everybody, and welcome back to Techstrong Unplugged. This is episode 11 of our series, and I'm your host, Atan Solomon. On Techstrong Unplugged, we dive into all things tech and get people up to speed with everything happening across the industry. Recently, our co-host Cassandra Chin went to the Great International Developer Summit, also known as GIDS. At GIDS 2024, Cassandra met up with Mary Grygleski, who is a veteran developer advocate and tech pioneer. Mary shared her journey from her early days coding in Fortran and Unix and her journey to becoming a prominent advocate in the Java ecosystem and beyond. Mary also discussed the challenges and triumphs of being a woman in tech, the evolution of software development, and her passion for fostering diversity and collaboration within the industry. Without further ado, let's head over to GIDS 2024.
Welcome back to Techstrong Unplugged. I'm your host, Cassandra Chin. And today we have Mary with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, thank you, Cassandra.
Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Mary Grygleski. I'm a developer advocate. Currently, too, I'm actually freelancing myself, just coming, to become independent, trying to start my own business. But I first started, more than 30 years ago, as a developer. At the time, there weren't that many women. It was just, developer coming out. In fact, my very first job was doing Fortran and Unix and C. And then Java came into, became the thing in the 90s. And that's when I slowly kind of switched to doing Java. So since 2000, I've been working with Java, open source, cloud. Sometimes you don't. Well, I tend to be very interested in many things. So I also adopted many other technology, but center around Java ecosystem. And then eventually I became a developer advocate. And so I've been doing advocacy for about 6 years as of now. So that's kind of like my computing background. Yeah.
How did you choose to get into technology?
Sure. So as such, I major in math and computer science. So when I was, I do have to tell the story that how I got interested, right? I grew up actually in a family with, I'm middle of three kids, right? My older brother is actually a very smart guy, but came to find out, unfortunately, he actually has autism. But in any event, with him being so focused in technology, and at the time, technology, especially software, was starting to become popular in the 80s like that, he got me at least be aware. But I didn't really like him because he was kind of like a little bit bully type of guy. He thought he was real smart. So anyway, he got me interested, and for me, I think I should say was that I wasn't thinking so much of doing computers as my career, but at the time, I came to I went to the U.S. for college, and then I started, I remember when I was registering at the registrar, and we had old IBM terminal, but it got me fascinated because I was like, oh, how does it work, right? When I was a student, you register with the student information systems, and that actually got me very interested at first. At first, too, I wasn't even computer science. I was trying to decide. And then there was also at the time, computer science was becoming the thing. So I started taking classes, and I really got interested to want to understand how things work. And that's how I got into computing, and then switched my major to computer science and math too. And so that's how I got into it. And naturally, when I graduated, I wanted to get into, working with computers. And first and foremost, too, folks are always thinking I'm going to be a programmer. So that's how I got in. So
That's a really cool inspiration.
Yeah, thank you.
You needed something to spark you to want to try to take classes.
That's true. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Do you mind if I ask where you grew up?
Sure. Yeah. So I was born in Hong Kong and raised in Hong Kong. And at the time, right, it wasn't like computers too. Again, the time when I was growing up, there wasn't computers. There wasn't even cell phone then, right? And like I said, I have this brother who's kind of really advanced in his age and his talents too. Got me becoming aware of it. So that's how I grew up. So that's my background. And so I kind of grew up in more like a multicultural type of environment too. I went to a school that actually required us to speak English in class. Wasn't an international school, but it was run by the nuns, right? Like a Catholic school. And but they were American missionary group. So then they made us all speak English, which I'm very thankful for. And because of that, I think being able to get exposed to a different language really helps, right? And so, yeah. And they said too, even with computing, a lot of times too, if you have a, knowledge of speaking other languages, it helps in your development, in your programming too. And I do believe it because as such, right, these days we have AI and it's all about linguistics. And that's actually talks about how important it is, right? It's a form of communication. It's really fundamental too. But anyway, I think I carried away. But yeah, so that's myself. Yeah. So, yeah.
So were you doing a lot of development out of college?
Yeah, so interestingly, when I first got out of school, right, everybody was like taking computer class. You would think, okay, I'm going to do development. But in reality, and as I think a lot of us know that if you're a developer, you come out, you join a company, but the very first thing you do is not usually a brand new development. Usually it's maintaining some old system, and sometimes do their spaghetti code. Anyway, in my case too, yes, I did programming, but that was more for a maintenance type of thing, not like brand new. But yeah, but that got me going, right, so to speak. Yeah, it was good.
Did you enjoy doing maintenance?
Yeah, I have to say that it's not as interesting maintenance because it's actually quite challenging because all of a sudden you are learning the code of it being written by someone, bad or not, right? And very often too, those code may not be well written or the whole system, wouldn't be clear and there's no proper documentation and describing the architecture. So it's kind of like a challenge of its own too, but it's more like puzzle. You like playing puzzle. You don't know the whole piece. You need to try to puzzle together things and reason it. It's a different set of skills. But I kind of like it because in some ways too, it's like, you're almost seems like CSI, right? Like a crime investigation, right?
Yeah.
In that sense, you can think of it also has its own challenges and interests, kind of level too of that. But for sure too, yeah, I was doing programming. There's, programming language as well as like scripting, all kinds of things too that kind of goes around doing development work. So yeah.
Do you think documentation is it better now?
Interestingly, I always feel documentation is never enough. I mean, first of all too is that, a lot of times we design systems, it's maybe one or two people's idea of what it should be as a whole, and other people learning it and then documenting it. It's never really very complete, right? Most of the time, not to say. But I don't think, in general, documentation is able to keep up with the system because, the requirements change and people keep changing to kind of, meet new needs of the system, what it serves. So as a result, too, very often documentation tends to be a little bit lag behind, at least, right? The best of it. So in general, it's not like very good in some sense.
Yeah, so it can always be better.
Exactly. However, in some ways, too, is that, I've done programming long enough that sometimes you sort of have a good sense of how things ought to work or even like you get better at knowing how it should work and you go back to actually, kind of like you say open source thing, you can go back and suggest to, the people, the core developers, it should be done some ways. You actually are kind of have that skills to kind of suggest how things can be done better and help them with documentation too. So yeah, I like that. So yeah.
I'd like to shift the topic over a little.
Sure.
So, I know you're wearing a woman in tech shirt.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you have a strong stance on it?
Yeah. Interestingly, I feel it is very true, for women to be in tech. I mean, it took some time. When I first started working, right, that was like 90s, let's say early 90s, it wasn't as many women. And of the women who were there, I seemed to be always the only woman or one of two women in a development kind of capacity. And it's never very easy. And I think, it's important definitely to get women into the picture. And I think women can do the job. But very often, because there tends to be more men, and sometimes too, I do have to say the men tends to be maybe either they are not very comfortable communicating, and it may kind of come across as rude or like not very welcoming. I think that's kind of a bit of a misunderstanding, right? But I think I do have to say, after working for so long, I do feel actually most people are very kind, I'd say. Yeah, you do run into one or two that are mean. I mean, you can't help it, right? And unfortunately, with those like bad apples, right, in the crowd, it makes you feel bad. But anyway, to go back to your question, right, women in tech, yeah, certainly. I think we should encourage more women if that's what their calling, so to speak, is, right? They shouldn't be, kind of shy away from it too. That's for sure.
Do you think the situation has gotten better at all compared to when you first started?
Yes, I do think so. I think if you kind of look around nowadays, right, there are a lot more initiatives. There are groups too that are encouraging more women to be involved with especially development type of work, software type of work. So I think definitely it's getting better. But to me too, it also can be better in some sense. And I don't also think it is necessary anymore to like differentiate there are women in tech or not non-women. But it's just more like, I think it should be like all together. And it just should be more of a more collaborative type of nature. It ought to be encouraged on all sides, I feel, right?
So you think that there's a strong divide between men and women?
Yeah.
Just because of the woman campaigns?
Exactly. I feel, it's a little strange. And to me, I feel, isn't it because sometimes women feel a little bit like unsure. So maybe that's why we form different groups to kind of do things separately. But there's really no need. Then let's kind of do things together. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Like,
yeah.
I think sometimes at women events, like, they try to encourage men to come as well.
That's true.
But
that's true.
It's a little difficult because there's women in the name.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, it should be more like together, I think. Yeah.
And like we should learn how to collaborate well.
Exactly. I think so. So, yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, for me, I think, I like to encourage, right, more people to do things. But I think what I like to encourage, again, not about, men or women or all these gender, but just that collaboration, I think is so important. And also the communication, too. And to me, after becoming an advocate, right, 6 years ago, I realized it's actually at the core of everything. We want to be able to communicate. Because you can have the best idea, but the thing is, though, if you cannot communicate outside or make it understood by other people, then sometimes, too, the effect isn't as profound, so to speak, right? You may have the best idea, but you want to learn how to communicate it properly to make other people understand. I think that's actually, it's actually even more important. Yeah, sometimes I think that's another thing is sometimes it tends to be maybe some, with the really deep like core engineers that are really good developers, but very often they don't like to talk, they don't like to communicate, they don't feel it's needed. But the fact is there is a need to make it known to other people because only by then people will recognize what you can do and you can also get your work be more, understood by everybody. And I think that's important. So yeah.
Have you ever had a situation where you've had an idea and communicated it and have made a difference?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to think. Yeah, it's to make a difference. I think I have, but but sometimes because the way I do things, I don't feel I want to be the center of attention. That's me. I just like to be with people and do things. I don't feel necessarily,
It's not about making a difference, but something happened when you said it.
Yeah. I think I have too, but at the moment I can't think of any specific case, right? Yeah, so it's like there were sometimes I say something, or maybe on Twitter or something, and people responded. Yeah, I think I have too. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So you're giving a talk tomorrow?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What is it about?
Okay, so tomorrow my first talk is solo talk. I'll be talking about essentially leveraging event streaming for doing these are more generative AI type of scenario. And as folks too, as of today, right, we're kind of, a lot of the ChatGPT apps, people are talking about RAGs, like retrieval augmented generation. And this is like a pattern, a technique that you use for augmenting your LLMs and for doing ChatGPT type of applications. So in my talk too, it's more about how can we leverage event streaming to kind of help with, LLMs to augment all of the things that LLM doesn't have, essentially. So, as such, it's a bit more of a ChatGPT kind of theme, but also then making use of, the streaming and also specifically about an open source project called Langstream. So that's the talk that I'll be talking about. Yeah, still a ChatGPT.
I think AI is a new technology.
Yeah.
Do you think it can help bring more women and diversity to join this AI initiative?
I believe so too. Yeah.
Or do you still think it's highly technical and it'll just have the same problems as current coding?
Yeah. Well, that's a very good question. I think certainly too we can bring women, and as such, right, for AI and especially the AI, this particular, ChatGPT, that's what is kind of earth-shaking these days. But the thing is, though, ChatGPT is only one branch of this whole AI umbrella of things, and there are so many things within AI. But certainly, too, I also see a lot of, the data side of things and governance and other regulatory things. And I think women, we have our specific skills or our, strength, too, in this aspect. And there's so much. And also, as such, too, AI, as we all know right now, is not regulated, right? They're just, the world is still trying to figure out this whole thing, and it has the potential of causing problems. So that's why there's a need to do regulatory type of stuff. So yeah, certainly too. I think even women being very thoughtful in general, we think of things like deeper or the implications, not just with the technology itself, because sometimes men tend to go very deep, like my thinking, right? You go into how do you implement stuff, but maybe not paying attention to how does it affect society as a general, right? All these broader type of understanding. I think that's where women can kind of step in. We have the knowledge of the deep thing, but there's no need to go too deep when you kind of talk about stuff that is broader, right? The implications.
I think it's not just because we're women, but we kind of have a different perspective because maybe we haven't been in technology as long.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, which is true. Yeah, that's right. And I think, again, it goes back to, in general, we tend to think of things more comprehensive too. We like to think of things like, like an overview of things. I think I've talked to also, previous colleagues or friends, and they also tend to, myself too, I like to understand things on a higher level, like a broader kind of spectrum, how it affects everything. I think we tend to be like that.
Yeah, I definitely could see it like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's like the big picture.
Yeah, that exactly, the big picture thing. Yes.
And then we talked about a lot of important topics today.
Yeah, sure.
So we've had a really good chat. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you so much, Cassandra. Yeah, thank you.